of our conversations with the winners of the Property Investors Awards 2024, with the winners for HMO Property Investor of the Year, Jake Colwill and Lucy Davies. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jake and Lucy. It's really lovely to have you both on. Firstly, huge congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much. And yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for inviting us on to have a chat today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's really great to have you both on. Firstly, I want to go back a little bit in time, if I can, and ask, how did your property career first start?
So we both come at it from, I guess, slightly different angles. So we met in university in Cardiff, and that's how we met. But before that, I guess from my side of things, I've always had an interest in property. So I grew up kind of on the tools. So my dad ran a kitchen business down in Cornwall, where I grew up. So I was spending like my evenings and weekends and school holidays kind of working for him, doing various like home improvements and stuff. So I was always around kind of property and property renovations, and always had like quite a keen interest in it. So from my perspective, that's kind of, I guess, where the initial interest in property came. And then for yourself?
I then inherited a property reasonably young. So not long after Jake and I met, I kind of had a bit of a predicament about what to do with this property. And based on its location, it's on the coast, it's quite a popular sort of tourist destination. I decided to sort of convert it into two Airbnbs, which Jake helped me with. We employed his dad's kitchen business and they put two new kitchens in for us. And we did a lot of sort of renovations ourselves, Jake and I, just painting and decorating, refurnishing, and then letting that property as two Airbnbs, which I still kind of manage and run as Airbnbs now. So that was in 2014.
So it's a bit of a baptism of fire because we didn't really know anything. Like we hadn't had any education, or I don't even know if like Airbnbs were that popular as a strategy back then. But we just thought, well, this is a good location. We referred to it as a holiday let at the time. It was a good location, so it just made logical sense. And you didn't want to sell it, did you? So we thought, well, let's do
Yeah,
this instead.
it was sort of a common sense decision at the time. We then went on to buy and renovate and sell our own home, and we did that a few times. We just sort of chose quite rundown properties. We would live in them and renovate them whilst we were living in them, and then go on to sell to make some profit, which we could then reinvest that profit into investment property, which started off as buy-to-lets, flats. And then we kind of developed our knowledge and skill set and moved into the HMO investment strategy from there on.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And that's great as well to hear kind of how you guys teamed up and met, obviously through Jake, your dad's kitchen business, and you, Lucy, with your derelict property. That sounds like a really, really great little story there. And you guys have now teamed up, am I correct in thinking, with your own business now, Innova Property?
Yeah, so we always knew from early on. So obviously we met in university. When we left university, we kind of sat down and had a bit of a chat, and we were like, what do we want to do? What career path do we want to take? And we both said, well, actually, we want to pursue a career in property. We didn't exactly know what that was going to look like at the time. So like Lucy mentioned, we ended up buying a flat to live in whilst we kind of climbed the corporate ladder and went down that route. So we both ended up doing different things. But then we were always renovating property alongside our day jobs. But we always knew from very early on that this was the career path that we wanted to pursue. And so we wanted to run it like a professional business. So we set up our company in 2018. But even before that, we were like documenting our refurbs on Instagram and social media. And it was really great to kind of connect with other people in the industry. And we started to learn a lot. And it all kind of snowballed really. So we met a lot of other developers and investors, as well as some of our sort of professional contacts like trades, architects, things like that. A lot of these contacts came through social media. So it's quite powerful, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And we listened to a lot of podcasts. We sort of absorbed a lot of the free resources and as much free education as we could get at the time. So yeah, it was podcasts, webinars, books, and going to any like local networking events that we could. And I think kind of learning from others as well inspired us to set up a limited company and yeah, we'll just start doing it that way and make it more professional business in 2018.
That's great to hear. And definitely, as you said, with all the property education stuff, there's a lot online that you can look at. So I guess that must have helped you guys a lot, especially when you were just starting out, because I guess you never really realized you'd both go into property, but I guess that education, especially with the websites, must have really helped.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. It was something we were always inspired to do. So we just kind of kept working at it until eventually we were able to both leave our corporate day jobs and focus on property full time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And can I ask as well, because obviously you guys work together as a couple, how does that dynamic work? Do you enjoy, I'm sure you guys both enjoy working together.
We do. I think it was a lot more challenging perhaps at the beginning where we were kind of finding our own roles. I think we're both quite driven and both quite passionate. So at times there may have been some butting heads over whose responsibility is what or having slightly different ideas about how to approach something. But as sort of time went on and we evolved and we became more responsible for our own areas of the business, I think that we've evolved to actually work quite cohesively and get along quite well.
yeah, you definitely have less of a filter when you're dealing with, your life partner or a family member. Maybe you're not quite so
You don't hold
political with
much.
your responses. So at times we've definitely had some differing views, but I think, we always meet somewhere in the middle, and that always ends up being the best route for the business.
Exactly. And I guess you guys as well, you can bounce off each other's ideas and stuff. Like, I guess as well, that works really nicely as well.
Yeah, we do always say the decision that we end up making, where it's had both of our involvement, tends to be the best outcome for our business. So it's definitely good to have sort of input from both sides.
Although there is not much downtime, we pretty much talk about property 24/7, don't we?
Yeah, slightly less so now we have a 1-year-old. He's kind of come into the mix and kind of got us
Yeah.
to focus on him and other things. But for a while, yeah, especially when we were living in building sites as well, it was you just kind of like were around
All,
it
all
all the
consuming.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, as you say, it must still be quite difficult to get downtime sometimes as well, especially now that you've got like a 1-year-old son as well. I hope you guys haven't been having too many sleepless nights.
I mean, yeah, when he was younger, obviously that was challenging. I took a bit of time out of the business, and Jake really took a lead role for a while, although I feel like I'm getting back into it now. Yeah, I mean that had its own challenges at times, but I think at the beginning we did absolutely everything, and we were really a two-man band. But now we've got so much support and we've got so much skill set around us in our team that it makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. We're now like we just coordinate everybody else around us, really. We're not doing any more manual labor on site or anything like that. So we've got, our virtual assistant that helps with the lettings. We've got the main contractors who deal with a lot of the work on site. We've got all of our professional contacts, whether that's planning consultants or architects. So yeah, a lot of it, you're just kind of you're the conductor of the orchestra, really.
Yeah. Oh, well, that sounds really great that you've got that really good support network there. So that's great. And it seems to have worked out for you guys really, really well, as you've obviously won HMO Property Investor of the Year. Before we talk about the award that you won, I wanted to ask you what initially drew you to investing in HMOs in particular?
Um, so I think the most obvious point of reference for me is that we lived in HMOs when we were studying in Cardiff. So we did a year in halls and then 2 years in sort of private rented HMOs. And so for us, I think it's twofold. So we really loved living in shared housing. You know, we thought it was great living with your friends. We loved like the convenience and the social aspect of it. So from like a demand and from like a societal point of view, I think there is, there is a real demand for HMOs. You know, people have a need and want to live in them. So I think that's one angle. And also, when we were living in these HMOs, and obviously, as we mentioned, we both had a bit of an interest in property. We were kind of just doing the maths and putting two and two together, and we were seeing, adding up what we were paying the landlord every month, and we knew that he had multiple properties. So we were probably slightly naive at the time, and we probably didn't factor in all like the mortgage costs and the maintenance and insurance and all that sort of stuff. But we were just looking at the kind of gross rent that we were paying him every month, thinking, "Wow, this is quite a good industry to be in." So I think from our perspective, HMOs were the obvious choice from well, very early on, really, weren't they?
Yeah. And at the same time, where we were following a few kind of key influencers on Instagram who were delivering some amazing high-end HMOs, we were totally inspired by like the types of interiors they were providing. And we were like, we really want to do that. We want to get involved. We want to have properties like this that we're really proud to let. We were excited when we were students to move into, our shared house, which thinking about it now was completely basic compared to what's on the market now. But it was really nice at the time. So we were definitely inspired by delivering high-end shared living.
Yeah, I think HMOs are a great strategy because they allow you to really kind of blur the lines between investing and developing. So a lot of the projects that we're undertaking, we're taking these houses back to brick. We are carrying out, full high-end refurbs. We are converting lofts. We're doing extensions. Quite a few of them recently. We've been installing solar panels on the roofs. And then we can really kind of push the boat out and have a bit of fun with the interiors. And ultimately, because the rental yields are so much higher, and obviously you can push the capital values up, it really allows you to do that sort of stuff. Whereas you don't really have scope within, like, let's say, like a buy-to-let model to do that sort of stuff because financially it just doesn't make sense.
That's really interesting to hear. And I know you were just speaking a little bit there about the refurbs and stuff that you do with HMOs. So what would you say are the biggest challenges when managing HMOs, and how do you overcome them?
For us, one of the biggest challenges we find is actually the perception of HMOs. So that is a challenge for us, firstly, when buying property, because a lot of the neighborhoods, the vendors, they don't always welcome HMO investors. There's a negative connotation around HMOs, especially in certain pockets of our investment area. So that can be quite a barrier for us. It also creates a barrier when we put in planning applications because we can quite often receive a lot of objections and negative comments. But we try really hard to kind of change people's perceptions on HMOs. So we closely manage, every element of the design and the build to make sure that our properties are suitable for the amount of housemates that are going to be there. And we're super close with our kind of lettings process and our tenant management. We do it all ourselves. We don't actually work with letting agents, so that we have that kind of complete control. And we make sure that our shared houses are places that people want to call a home, that they're going to respect the neighborhood. And we've actually I would definitely say we've changed the perception in those particular areas that we have bought properties, and we've won all of our neighbours round so far. But that definitely is a barrier when you're kind of coming into a new area and you're trying to purchase a property, you're trying to put in a planning application.
Yeah, there's obviously a broad spectrum of different tenant demographics, even within the HMO model. So I guess it's also worth pointing out. So all of our portfolio is either professional, shared housing, or students. So that's the two kind of key focuses for us. Obviously, you've also got kind of supported living and temporary housing and all that sort of stuff that fall within that. But I think there's definitely a negative connotation towards the word HMO, and people immediately assume the worst. So people get their back up before you've even kind of put the tenants in there. And again, when it comes to planning, planning's been a real challenge for us in certain cases, hasn't it? We've had sort of planning refused. That's either been sort of a committee or, just then we've had to go to appeal, and it just drags the process out for a long time and it costs a lot of money. So yeah, it's always quite challenging, I think, dealing with other people's expectations.
Exactly. That was really interesting there, what you were both saying about there is this negative stereotype, I think, that comes with HMOs and also landlords as well, because obviously at the moment, stuff going on with the Renters' Rights Bill and stuff like that. And there is this negative connotation that does come with landlords. And as you were saying there, Lucy, I think with about the planning permissions and sometimes the neighbours they just don't really want to have a HMO next to them. But it sounds like you guys have won them round, which I think is really, really great. So, what would you say has been your most successful HMO project to date?
So it's an interesting question because obviously what makes a HMO successful to one landlord or investor might be very different to another one. So obviously some people use HMO development as a way to really kind of force capital values and force the return on capital employed as high as possible. Whereas for somebody else, they might be, I don't know, working in a separate industry and they're really just parking their cash, maybe buying existing HMOs, potentially like in the Article 4 area. And they're really seeing HMOs as a kind of a safe and secure investment for the long term. So I guess it varies based on kind of what you're trying to achieve. But if we're looking at kind of like a purely financial metric, um, we did a couple of HMO projects that fell within the year of this kind of awards, sort of entry that worked out really well for us. And we had a few that were actually kind of over 100% return on capital employed. I think so. If you're looking at purely like a financial metric, that's probably as good as it gets really to get all your money back out. But then we did others that we were just as happy with that were much lower return on paper. Arguably possibly nicer houses, but in slightly different areas. So it kind of varies really, doesn't it?
Does, yeah. I think both of those projects that Jake mentioned were both, we managed to do some kind of creative things like we managed to buy a property with a sort of bit of land across the side. So we were able to do a side extension and we were able to maximize that into 8 bedrooms. So it's always good when you can find a property that's got that potential or that scope for the extra development. So they were both pretty good projects all in a short space of time.
I think that one, yeah, that one in particular, it all things kind of came together, didn't it? So we actually bought that right after the Liz Truss mini budget. So it was actually under offer by with somebody else, another developer. They were going to buy this property, and they pulled out after the mini budget because rates were going through the roof, and there's all this negativity in the media around kind of the UK going into recession. So we picked that up, I think about 65k less than it was previously under offer for. We got a great price on the way in. We understood the planning policy in the local area, having done quite a few projects in that kind of postcode. So we then managed to obtain planning for an 8 bedroom student house with 4 off-street parking spaces and a separate garage. So it's a huge, huge plot. We then, created a really high spec student house, bought the building on budget and got that one valued up £840,000 from a 330k purchase price. So from a financial perspective, great figures. So I think, yeah, that one in particular was a great success.
Yeah, as you say with that one, it just kind of sounds like everything came together, and it sounds like all your other HMOs and other projects, they all came together as well. And I think that's probably why you guys won HMO Property Investor of the Year. We were just talking a little bit earlier before we actually came on to the interview, because I wanted to ask you, how does it feel since you guys won the award? Obviously, you guys weren't there, unfortunately, at the Property Investors Awards night, and you still need to get your hands on the trophy, but I know it's coming to you soon. But how does it feel since you've won the award, and would you recommend people to apply to the Property Investors Awards?
Yeah, it's been great. We would definitely recommend it. I think for us, it's an amazing recognition for kind of like a lot of the hard work that we've put in and the sort of standards that we've achieved with some of our properties. And it also really helps to go towards our credibility when we're working with private investors or other developers. So I think for those couple of points, it's been really good for us.
Yeah, it's good for, people that are involved in our projects to also see that the hard work that they're also putting in and supporting us with, they can see it's something tangible to say, actually, either I invested in this project or, I was involved in the build or the planning, and actually this is an award-winning project. And again, I think for those guys and girls, it helps change the perception of HMOs and realize that actually they can be a really positive thing for the local area and a positive investment.
Yeah, and I guess on a personal note as well, we've been invited to quite a few different things as a result of winning that award. So we've been invited to go and speak at an event, a podcast, obviously speaking to you today. So it's quite nice to like get out there and get involved with some other events that we maybe wouldn't have done beforehand.
That's really great to hear. And definitely as well, it's just so well-deserved recognition for you guys and everyone that won the awards as well. And it's great to hear that you recommend that people apply, which I think is great. And now, obviously, we are at the end of January, but what property projects have you got planned for the rest of 2025, or can you not reveal it to us yet?
Yeah, we can. So we've what have we
We,
got going on this year? We've got a couple
well,
of big projects coming up.
yeah, I think the last couple of years we've gone through a real period of growth. So a lot of our focus this year is actually going to be on quality over quantity. So we've already got quite a few, larger projects in the pipeline. So we're doing a few different things. We have got a couple of HMOs on the horizon, but also we're looking at some blocks of flats and also commercial to resi conversions. So we run two separate businesses. So we've got a development business that focuses on selling properties, and then our investment business that's predominantly sort of HMO focused. So for us, it's always getting the balance between those two correct so that we can grow sustainably. So for us, I think it's going to be on delivering some great, blocks of flats and commercial conversions, and then reinvest that cash back into HMOs, but possibly at a slightly slower scale. Although, to be honest, with everything that's in the pipeline, it probably won't be.
Lucy, did you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. I think we quite often say we're going to slow down, but it never actually works out that way. I think we've got quite a busy year ahead of us actually. I think maybe it feels slightly slower potentially because we are working with some clients this year. So previously, kind of every project we've done has been sort of within our own business, and it's slightly new ground for us working with some clients and kind of supporting them with some of their bigger projects as well. So that's quite exciting and something new for us.
That sounds really exciting. You guys will have to keep us updated with those projects. And it sounds like you've got a really, really busy year ahead. So I do hope that you are able to get some downtime during 2025.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we've just got to plan it in. So yeah, we're already looking at kind of when we're going to do some holidays and some trips, and if that's in the diary, we kind of live by our diary. So if we factor it in, we should get some downtime.
Oh, good. Well, fingers crossed. And finally, I'd like to ask you both, what advice would you give to anyone who wants to get started in property? Jake, did you want to go first and then Lucy?
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say something that's really important. So we do it for our own business, and we also encourage any of our mentees or consultancy clients to do the same. Is to think forward to what you want to achieve. So whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever your time frame is, figure out what you want your life to look like, and then reverse engineer it. So you can then formulate a strategy and a business to suit your life ambitions rather than the other way around. And we would certainly say once you've done that process and you're confident, we would then say really focus and try and niche down. So there's a lot of shiny pennies out there, and every time you listen to a podcast or go on an event or anything like that, there's always a new thing to focus on, and it's really easy to get kind of analysis paralysis. And it's definitely the case, I think, with us when we first started, wasn't it? That we would learn about this strategy, then learn about this strategy, and then all of a sudden you've kind of achieved nothing. So you're just too busy kind of reading articles and studying. So we'd say, yeah, figure out what you actually want to achieve out of this, and then work backwards, and then focus and just niche down. And then that's when your results will start to compound.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that something that really supports us is setting our goals, breaking those goals down by each quarter, and kind of just focusing on those particular goals. We have them written down on a whiteboard. We know exactly what we're focusing on for the next 3 months, so that it keeps us laser focused. But going back to your question around advice for people who are just getting started, another thing I think has been totally valuable for us is getting to know other property investors, people who've done it before. If you can find people within your own local area, that's even better. But they don't have to be in your local area, because I think sometimes investing in property, you can have to make some big scary decisions, spending a lot of money, and people around you in your immediate circle, your friends, your family, might tell you that you're taking too much risk, or they might try and talk you out of it, or they might not be able to share some of the interests that you're looking into. So speaking to other people who've done it, who are also in this sort of industry, is really supportive. And there's always going to be hard times. There's always going to be moments where things haven't gone quite to plan. So knowing people who've been through it before you, or who are experiencing maybe different challenges, but it kind of makes you feel a bit more supported and a bit better about your situation.
Helps keep you on track for sure.
Yeah, that's always been really, really helpful for us. So just getting out there and building your network is really valuable.
Exactly. That's some really good tips and advice there. So I hope for any aspiring property investors that are watching that those are helpful. Well, thank you so much, Jake and Lucy, for joining me today. It was really great to have you on. Once again, huge congratulations on your award. And for anyone watching, please do consider to apply to the Property Investors Awards. Thank you so much, Jake and Lucy.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Cheers.